something that would stay in their hearts forever. Jesus stood by the lake, and the crowd gathered around him. They had heard about his miracles. They had seen him heal the sick. But today, they came to hear his words, words that felt like water to a thirsty soul. He looked at the crowd and said, "The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field." Everyone leaned closer. "There was a man," Jesus said, "a poor man who worked in the fields. He didn't own land. He didn't have riches. He worked from sunrise to sunset, digging, planting, and sweating just to feed his family. His name was Eli. Eli lived in a small house made of mud and stone. He had a wife named Miriam and 2 little children. Every morning, Eli would wake up early, carry his tools, and go to the field. It wasn't his field. He worked for someone else. But he was thankful for the little he had. One day, as Eli worked under the burning sun, his shovel hit something hard in the dirt. Clang! He paused. He thought it was a rock. But when he dug around it, he saw the edge of a wooden box, old, dusty, and covered in roots. Eli's heart started beating fast. He looked around to make sure no one was watching. The field was quiet. Only the birds in the trees and the sound of his own breath filled the air. With shaking hands, he opened the box. Inside was gold. Shining gold. Coins. Jewels. Silver. Things he had only heard about in stories. Things kings owned. Eli's eyes filled with tears. This treasure was enough to feed his family for life. Enough to build a home. Enough to never work under the hot sun again. But he couldn't take it. The field wasn't his. He closed the box and buried it again. He sat down, wiping the sweat from his face. He knew what he had to do. That evening, Eli ran home faster than ever. "Miriam," he cried out as he entered the house, "we must sell everything. Everything we own." Miriam was shocked. "Everything? But why?" "I found something," Eli whispered. "Something worth more than anything we've ever known. But I must buy the field where it's hidden." Miriam looked into his eyes and saw something she hadn't seen before: hope, fire, joy. She nodded. They sold the house, their clothes, their tools, even the little furniture they had. Friends thought they were crazy. Neighbors laughed at them. "Why would Eli give up everything?" they said. "He has nothing left." But Eli smiled. He knew something they didn't. He had seen the treasure. Finally, he had just enough money to buy the field. The landowner looked surprised. "You want to buy that field? It's just dry ground and old trees." Eli nodded. "Yes, I want that field." And with joy burning in his heart, Eli paid the price. The field was his. Now, the treasure was his too. Jesus looked at the crowd. Some had their mouths open. Some had tears in their eyes. "That," he said gently, "is what the kingdom of heaven is like. When you see how precious it is, when you understand what God has for you, you will give up everything just to have it. And you will do it with joy." The crowd was silent. They had never thought of God's kingdom like treasure. But now, they were starting to see. That night, Eli couldn't sleep. Not because of worry, but because of excitement. He kept thinking about the treasure. He had never owned anything so beautiful. But even more than that, he felt something else: peace. Joy that filled his heart. He had trusted. He had obeyed. And now, he was not just rich in gold. He was rich in purpose. The next day, he returned to the field, not to dig, but to sit. He watched the sunrise, and he smiled. But Eli had a secret. The treasure wasn't just for him. As he looked at the road that led to the village, he knew what he had to do next. There were others who needed to know. There were others walking through life, tired, hopeless, thinking all they had was dry ground, not knowing that treasure was just beneath their feet. Eli stood up, and as the sun rose over the hills of Galilee, he began to walk toward the village, toward the people, ready to share what he had found. He had given up everything to gain everything, and now he would help others do the same. Eli walked down the dusty road toward the village, his heart full. The treasure was his now, but something inside told him this joy wasn't meant to stay hidden. It had to be shared. As he entered the village, he saw an old friend, Ezra, sitting by the well. Ezra had once been a strong man, but life had worn him down. He had debts he couldn't pay and children he couldn't feed. He looked up and saw Eli smiling. "Eli," he said, "I heard you sold everything. People say you've gone mad." Eli laughed gently. "Maybe I have, Ezra. Or maybe I found something worth more than anything I've ever owned." Ezra leaned in. "What do you mean?" Eli sat beside him. "I found treasure. Real treasure. But not just gold. I found peace, joy, something deeper than just coins. And it was buried in a place no one cared about. A dry field." Ezra looked confused. "You bought a field?" "Yes," Eli said, "because I saw something in it that others didn't. And now it's mine." Ezra shook his head. "I wish I could believe like that. But I've got nothing left." "That's the best part," Eli smiled. "This treasure, this joy from God, it's not for the rich. It's not for the strong. It's for those who are willing to give up everything to follow Him. And when they do, they'll gain more than they ever lost." Ezra looked down. His hands were rough and tired. He thought of his children, his sleepless nights. Then he asked, "What do I have to give?" Eli replied, "Only your heart. Only your trust. That's all God wants." Ezra looked into Eli's eyes. For the first time in years, he saw hope. And so it began. Eli shared his story with more people. The baker, the carpenter, the widow who cried alone. He told them about the field, the treasure, and how he had given up everything, but never felt richer. Some laughed. Some listened. Some walked away. But a few stayed. A few hearts were stirred. And those few started looking, not with their eyes, but with their hearts. One by one, they began to understand. The kingdom of heaven wasn't about gold or land or power. It was about finding something so valuable, so full of life, that you would give up everything else to have it. They began to change. They forgave their enemies. They gave to the poor. They prayed with open hearts. They lived like people who had found treasure. And as more people listened, more lives were changed. Many years later, children sat around their grandfather, who now had silver hair and kind eyes. It was Eli. They loved his stories. But their favorite was always the one about the treasure. "Grandfather," one little boy asked, "was the treasure really gold?" Eli smiled. "Yes. But that was just the beginning. The real treasure was what it taught me. that the kingdom of heaven is more precious than anything in this world. The children listened closely. "One day," Eli said softly, "you'll hear God calling you too. You may not find a box in the dirt, but you'll feel something in your heart. When you do, don't be afraid to let go of everything else. What He gives you in return will be greater than anything you leave behind." The sun was setting behind the hills, painting the sky with colors of fire and peace. And Eli, once a poor man in a dry field, now smiled as a man who had lived a full life, a man who found treasure and never stopped sharing it. The end. "Tell my brother to share the family money with me," a man shouted as Jesus was teaching the crowd. The people had gathered from all over to listen to Jesus. Some came to be healed. Some came to learn. Others just wanted to see miracles. But this man had a different reason. He wanted more money. Jesus looked at him and said, "Friend, who made me a judge to decide such things between you?" Then Jesus turned to the crowd. His eyes were kind, but serious. "Watch out," He warned them. "Be careful of wanting more and more. Life is not about owning many things." The people grew quiet. They leaned in closer. Some looked at their own clothes, their sandals, or the small bags of coins in their pockets. Jesus was about to tell a story, a parable. And everyone knew that when Jesus told a parable, it meant something much deeper than it first sounded. "There was a rich man," Jesus began. "His land gave him a big harvest. So much grain, so many crops, more than ever before." People nodded. A good harvest was a great blessing. But Jesus went on. The man looked at his overflowing barns and said to himself, "What should I do? I have no place to store all my crops." Then he had an idea. He smiled and said, "I know what I'll do. I'll tear down my small barns and build bigger ones. Huge barns. Strong barns. I'll store all my grain and goods there." The man wasn't done talking to himself. He said, "After that, I will say to myself, you have plenty of grain saved up for many years. Take it easy. Eat, drink, and enjoy yourself." Some of the people in the crowd smiled. That did sound like a good life. Resting, eating, enjoying. But Jesus didn't smile. He shook his head slowly. He raised his voice and said, "But God said to him, 'You fool! Tonight your life will be taken from you. Then who will get all the things you have stored up?'" The crowd gasped. The man had worked so hard. He had planned everything, except for the one thing he couldn't control: his own life. Jesus looked around at the people and finished the story with this warning: "This is how it will be for anyone who stores up things only for themselves, but is not rich toward God." Silence fell over the crowd. The message was strong. Being rich wasn't the problem. The problem was forgetting God. The rich man had no space in his heart for thankfulness. No thoughts of helping others. No prayers. Just plans for himself. A young boy in the crowd whispered to his mother, "Mama, was the man really a fool?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, because he thought his things could keep him safe." But Jesus wasn't done teaching. He turned to his disciples and spoke again. "Do not worry about your life," he said. "Do not worry about what you will eat. Do not worry about your clothes. Life is more than food. The body is more than clothes." Then he pointed to the sky. Birds flew freely overhead, singing and flapping their wings. "Look at the birds," Jesus said. They don't plant. They don't gather crops. They don't store food in barns. But God feeds them. And you are much more valuable to God than birds. He then pointed to the field, where wild flowers danced in the breeze. Look at the lilies of the field. They do not work or make clothes. But even King Solomon in all his riches was not dressed as beautifully as one of these. The people smiled now. Some laughed. They could see the flowers. They could hear the birds. Jesus was using what they could see to explain what they couldn't always understand. Jesus asked, "If God takes care of flowers, which are here today and gone tomorrow, how much more will He take care of you, O you of little faith?" The disciples listened closely. Some of them had left everything to follow Jesus. No money, no home, no job. Just faith. Jesus said, "Don't keep worrying about what you will eat or drink. The people of the world worry about these things. But your Father knows that you need them." Then He gave them the answer. "But seek first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be given to you as well." The wind picked up slightly. Dust swirled at Jesus' feet. He turned to the people once more. "Do not be afraid, little flock," He said gently, "for your Father has chosen gladly to give you the kingdom." People began to whisper among themselves. They had never heard anything like this before. Some began to think about their own lives. Have I been trusting in money? In my work? In my plans? Others looked at their neighbors. Have I been helping others, or only thinking of myself? And still others wondered about the kingdom Jesus spoke of. What kind of kingdom is this? Where is it? Can I be part of it? But before anyone could ask, Jesus continued. Jesus looked at the people's faces. Some were confused. Some were thinking deeply. Others were still wondering what it meant to be rich toward God. So He said, "If you want treasure that lasts, then sell what you have and give to the poor. That kind of treasure can never be taken away. Put your treasure in heaven, where thieves can't steal and moths can't destroy." Then Jesus added something very important. "Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." The people went quiet again. That line struck them. It stayed in their minds like a song that wouldn't leave. One young man, who had been quiet all day, raised his hand slowly. "Teacher," he asked, "how can I know if my heart is in the right place?" Jesus smiled kindly and said, "Think about what you love the most. What you spend your time thinking about. What you worry about. That's where your heart is. If your heart is with God, then your treasure will be in heaven." He walked a little and picked up a small fig from the ground. It had fallen from a tree nearby. He held it up. "You see this fig? It grows slowly, quietly. It takes time. But one day, it's full and sweet. That's how it is when you grow rich toward God. You won't see it all at once. But as you trust God, love others, give freely, and pray, your treasure in heaven grows." He looked back toward the crowd. "But if you only chase riches here on earth, like the rich fool, your treasure disappears when your life ends." Some of the people lowered their heads. They had been chasing money, clothes, land, and comfort. But now they saw how quickly it could all be gone. Jesus wasn't trying to make them feel bad. He was trying to open their eyes. Then He said something else. "Be ready, like servants waiting for their master to return from a wedding feast. Keep your lamps burning. Stay awake. For the Son of Man will come at a time when you don't expect him." The crowd grew quiet again. His voice was soft but firm. The message was clear: be ready. Live wisely. Use what you have to bless others. Love God more than things. An older woman near the back whispered to her friend, "So the rich fool wasn't a fool because he was rich. He was a fool because he lived like he would never die." Her friend nodded. "And he forgot to think of others. He forgot to think of God." Jesus saw that the people were starting to understand. He had planted seeds in their hearts. Some would grow quickly, some slowly, but the truth was there now. As the sun began to lower in the sky, golden light touched the hills around them. The crowd began to leave, quietly thinking about what they had heard. Some gave food to the poor before they left. Others hugged their children tighter. A few even began to plan how they could use their money to help others instead of just building bigger barns. And one man, the same man who had shouted about his brother and the family money, walked away without saying a word. His eyes were wide. His heart was heavy. But maybe, just maybe, he had started to change. Jesus and his disciples began walking too, heading toward the next town. But behind them, the words he had spoken still echoed in the people's hearts. Be rich toward God. Your life does not consist in the abundance of things. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And that is the end of the story Jesus told. But for those who listened, it was just the beginning of a new way to live. The end. Jacob was a man who had spent his life trying to get ahead. He was the younger twin brother of Esau, and from the day they were born, they had been rivals. Esau was strong and hairy, a man who loved hunting in the open fields. Jacob, on the other hand, preferred staying home, thinking and planning. One day, when Esau was very hungry, Jacob tricked him into selling his birthright for a bowl of soup. Later, Jacob disguised himself as Esau and stole the blessing meant for his brother. Because of this, Esau hated Jacob and planned to kill him. Jacob had no choice but to run away. 4 years, Jacob lived far from home, working for his uncle Laban. During that time, he became rich, marrying 2 wives and having many children. But deep inside, he knew he couldn't run forever. One day, God told Jacob it was time to return to his homeland. Jacob was afraid. He knew Esau would be waiting, and he didn't know if his brother still wanted revenge. As he traveled back, he sent messengers ahead with gifts for Esau, hoping to calm his anger. But when the messengers returned, they brought frightening news. Esau was coming to meet Jacob with 400 men. That night, Jacob divided his family and servants into groups, thinking that if Esau attacked one group, the others might escape. Then, he did something unusual. Jacob sent everyone else ahead and stayed alone by the Jabbok River. As Jacob sat by the river, he thought about his life. He remembered the lies, the tricks, and the people he had hurt. He realized that he had always depended on himself, not on God. He was scared, and for the first time, he truly prayed, asking God for help. Suddenly, out of the darkness, a man appeared. Jacob didn't know who it was, but the man grabbed him, and they began to wrestle. Jacob fought with all his strength, and the man did not overpower him. They wrestled all through the night, neither one giving up. As the sky started to brighten, the man touched Jacob's hip, and immediately, Jacob's hip was dislocated. Pain shot through his body, but Jacob still held on tightly. "Let me go," the man said, "for the dawn is breaking." But Jacob refused. I will not let you go unless you bless me." The man stopped struggling and looked at Jacob. "What is your name?" he asked. "Jacob," he replied. Then the man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob. From now on, you will be called Israel, because you have struggled with God and with men and have prevailed." Jacob's heart raced. This was no ordinary man. He realized he had been wrestling with God himself. Trembling, Jacob asked, "What is your name?" But the man did not answer. Instead, he blessed Jacob and disappeared. Jacob limped away from the river, his hips still hurting. But he was a changed man. He had seen God face to face and lived. Jacob knew that from this moment, his life would never be the same. He named the place Peniel, which means face of God, because he said, "I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been spared." As the sun rose, Jacob saw Esau's army approaching in the distance. Jacob squinted at the horizon. The sun rose higher, and with it, Esau and his men came into view. The sight sent chills down Jacob's spine. 400 men. Was this an army coming to destroy him? Jacob, still limping from his struggle with God, gathered his courage. He arranged his family into groups. First, he placed his servants with their children. Then Leah and her children. Finally, Rachel and Joseph, his most beloved, were in the last group. He instructed them, "When you meet Esau, bow low and tell him, 'Your servant Jacob is behind us.'" Jacob hoped this would show his brother he came in peace. But Jacob didn't stay back with his family. For the first time, he stepped forward, leading the way. This was not the same Jacob who had run from Esau in fear. This was a man who had wrestled with God and found his destiny. As Esau's group drew nearer, Jacob bowed low to the ground, not once, but 7 times, as a sign of respect and humility. Each step was painful, his injured hip reminding him of the encounter at the river. Finally, Esau reached him. Jacob braced himself, expecting anger, maybe even violence. But what happened next surprised him. Esau ran toward Jacob, not with a sword but with open arms. He threw his arms around Jacob and hugged him tightly. Esau wept, and so did Jacob. Years of anger, fear, and bitterness melted away in that moment. "Who are all these people with you?" Esau asked, looking at the groups of women and children. "These are the children God has graciously given your servant," Jacob replied. One by one, Jacob's family approached Esau and bowed before him. Esau looked at the gifts Jacob had sent ahead, herds of goats, sheep, camels, and more. "What's the meaning of all these?" Esau asked. "They are a gift, my lord, to find favor in your eyes," Jacob said. But Esau shook his head. "I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself." Jacob insisted, "No, please. If I have found favor in your eyes, accept this gift. For to see your face is like seeing the face of God, now that you have received me so kindly." Reluctantly, Esau accepted the gifts. Then he said, "Let us journey together. I will go ahead of you." But Jacob hesitated. "My lord, the children are young, and the animals are nursing. If we drive them too hard, they will die. Please, go ahead of me. I will follow at a slower pace." Esau agreed and left with his men, while Jacob slowly made his way forward. But instead of following Esau, Jacob turned toward a different path, heading to a place called Sukkos. Though peace had been restored between the brothers, Jacob still felt uneasy. He built a house for himself and shelters for his animals in Sukkos, settling there for a while. But Jacob's journey wasn't over. He knew God had called him to return to Bethel, the place where God had first appeared to him in a dream. It was there that God had promised to bless him and make his descendants like the dust of the earth. As Jacob rested in Sukkot, he began to wonder, what would God require of him next? Jacob stayed in Sukkot for a time, but deep in his heart, he knew he couldn't remain there forever. God's call to return to Bethel grew stronger each day. He remembered the dream he had so many years ago, the ladder reaching to heaven and God's promise to protect him wherever he went. One night, as Jacob sat outside under the stars, God spoke to him again. "Get up, go to Bethel, and settle there. Build an altar to me, the God who appeared to you when you fled from your brother Esau." Jacob rose early the next morning and called his family together. "We are going to Bethel," he announced. "But first, we must purify ourselves. Get rid of the foreign gods you have among you and change your clothes." The family obeyed. They gave Jacob all their idols and the earrings they wore as symbols of other gods. Jacob buried them under the great tree near Shechem. As they set out for Bethel, Jacob was nervous about the journey. The land was filled with enemies, and he had no army to protect his family. But God was with them. A great terror fell on the surrounding towns, and no one dared to attack Jacob or his household. When they arrived at Bethel, Jacob built an altar, just as God had commanded. He named the place El Bethel, meaning God of Bethel, because it was there that God had revealed himself to him in his time of need. While Jacob worshipped, God appeared to him again and repeated his promises. "I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation, indeed a community of nations, will come from you. Kings will descend from you, and the land I gave to Abraham and Isaac I will give to you and your descendants." Jacob's heart was filled with awe and gratitude. He set up a stone pillar at the site, poured a drink offering on it, and anointed it with oil to honor God. But Jacob's journey was far from over. As they traveled on from Bethel, Rachel, his beloved wife, went into labor. The journey had been hard on her, and her pains were severe. As the baby was born, Rachel realized her life was slipping away. With her final breath, she named her son Benoni, which means "son of my sorrow." But Jacob, unable to bear such a sorrowful name for his child, called him Benjamin, meaning "son of my right hand." Rachel died there, on the way to Ephrath, and Jacob buried her by the roadside. He set up a pillar over her grave, a monument that stood as a reminder of her love and sacrifice. Grief weighed heavily on Jacob, but he pressed on, knowing that God's promises still lay ahead. He traveled toward Hebron, where his father Isaac still lived. But as Jacob moved closer to his destiny, more trials awaited him. In the distance, he could see the land promised to his family, but he also sensed that his journey was far from finished. As Jacob and his family journeyed closer to Hebron, the weight of God's promises mingled with the struggles of his past. Each step reminded him of the life he had lived, the blessings he had received, and the pain he had endured. When they finally arrived in the region, Jacob's heart swelled with mixed emotions. He was returning to the land of his father, Isaac, who was now old and nearing the end of his days. Seeing his father again brought memories of his youth, of the time he had deceived Isaac to steal Esau's blessing. Isaac, though frail, welcomed Jacob with open arms. The father and son spoke for hours about all that had happened. Jacob shared stories of God's faithfulness and how the Lord had protected him through every trial. Isaac, with a trembling voice, spoke words of encouragement and reminded Jacob of God's covenant with their family. But life in the land was not without its challenges. Jacob's sons, especially Simeon and Levi, were fiery and impulsive. Their actions in Shechem, where they had avenged their sister Dinah by destroying an entire town, still weighed heavily on Jacob. He worried about the future, wondering if his children truly understood the weight of God's promises. One evening, while Jacob sat near the fire, watching the stars, his son Joseph approached him. Joseph, still a teenager, was different from his brothers. He had a curious and thoughtful heart, and Jacob loved him deeply. Perhaps too deeply. "Father," Joseph said, sitting beside him, "you've told us about God's promises to our family. Do you think they will come true?" Jacob looked at his son, his eyes full of wisdom and weariness. "God never breaks his promises, my son. But his ways are not always easy to understand. We must trust him, even when the path is hard." Joseph nodded, his eyes shining with wonder. But Jacob couldn't help noticing the jealousy brewing among his other sons. They saw how he favored Joseph, giving him the colorful robe that marked him as special. Jacob tried to be fair, but his love for Joseph was hard to hide. Days turned into weeks, and tension grew in the camp. One night, Joseph came running to his father, his face glowing with excitement. "Father, I had a dream." Jacob listened as Joseph described how he and his brothers were binding sheaves of grain in a field. Joseph's sheaf stood upright, while the others bowed down to it. "What does it mean, Father?" Joseph asked eagerly. Before Jacob could answer, Joseph's brothers, who had overheard the dream, sneered. "Do you think you'll rule over us?" they said bitterly. Jacob was troubled. He loved Joseph, but he also saw the danger his dreams and his favor could bring. He pulled Joseph aside and cautioned him, "Be careful, my son. Not everyone will understand what God shows you." But Joseph could not stop dreaming. A few nights later, he came to Jacob with another vision. "Father, I dreamed the sun, moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me." This time, even Jacob was taken aback. "What kind of dream is this?" he said. "Will your mother and I, along with your brothers, bow down to you?" Though Jacob rebuked Joseph, he couldn't ignore the sense that these dreams held a deeper meaning. He kept them in his heart, wondering what God was preparing for his beloved son. Little did Jacob know, these dreams would set in motion a chain of events that would test his family in ways he could never imagine. The days went by, and Jacob's family continued to grow more divided. Joseph's brothers could no longer hide their resentment. The coat, the dreams, and Jacob's clear favoritism fed their jealousy until it turned into hatred. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers, who were grazing their flocks far from home. As Joseph approached, his brothers saw him from a distance. "Here comes the dreamer," one of them sneered. "Let's kill him and see what becomes of his dreams," another said. But Reuben, the eldest, tried to save Joseph. "Let's not kill him," he said. "Throw him into this empty pit instead. That way, we won't have his blood on our hands." Reuben secretly planned to rescue Joseph later. When Joseph reached them, the brothers ripped off his beautiful coat and threw him into the pit. Joseph cried out for help, but they ignored him. While they ate their meal, a caravan of traders approached, heading to Egypt. Judah, one of the brothers, had an idea. "Why kill him when we can make some money? Let's sell him to these traders." The brothers agreed. They pulled Joseph out of the pit and sold him for 20 pieces of silver. As the caravan disappeared into the distance, The brothers realized they needed a story to explain Joseph's absence. They took his coat, dipped it in goat's blood, and brought it to Jacob. "We found this," they said. "Is it Joseph's coat?" Jacob recognized it immediately. Tears streamed down his face as he cried, "A wild animal has devoured him. My son is gone." Jacob tore his clothes in grief and refused to be comforted, saying, "I will mourn for my son until the day I die." Meanwhile, Joseph was taken to Egypt and sold as a slave to Potiphar, an official in Pharaoh's court. Though far from home and betrayed by his own family, Joseph trusted in God. Even in his suffering, God was with him, blessing him and preparing him for a greater purpose. Years passed, and Joseph's life was filled with highs and lows. He was falsely accused and imprisoned, but eventually rose to power as Pharaoh's second-in-command. Through God's wisdom, Joseph saved Egypt from a devastating famine. Back in Canaan, Jacob and his family were struggling to survive the same famine. Hearing that there was grain in Egypt, Jacob sent his sons to buy food. When they arrived, they were brought before Joseph, though they didn't recognize him. Joseph tested his brothers, wanting to see if their hearts had changed. After a series of events, he revealed his identity. "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into slavery," he said, weeping. "Do not be angry with yourselves. It was God who sent me here ahead of you to save lives." Overwhelmed with emotion, the brothers begged for forgiveness. Joseph embraced them, saying, "What you meant for evil, God meant for good." Joseph invited Jacob and the entire family to live in Egypt, where they would have food and safety. When Jacob learned that Joseph was alive, he was overjoyed. "My son is alive. I will go and see him before I die." Jacob and his family moved to Egypt, and the reunion between father and son was filled with tears of joy. Jacob lived the rest of his days surrounded by his family, knowing that God had kept his promises. Before he died, Jacob blessed his sons and reminded them of God's covenant. He asked to be buried in the land of Canaan, alongside Abraham and Isaac. When Jacob passed away, Joseph honored his father's wishes and buried him in the family tomb. Though Jacob's story ended, his legacy lived on through his 12 sons, who became the leaders of the 12 tribes of Israel. Through Jacob's family, God's promise to bless the world would ultimately be fulfilled in the generations to come. The end.